Hello Steelers and welcome to another hobby update, post-salute hobby updates, which I'm going to talk about later on in the video once I've gone through some of the stuff that I've been up to over the last couple of weeks. And it was madness. That was last weekend, so this is I've had now a full week to recover from it, and my god, I did need recovering because it was such a hectic day. But as I say, I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. I managed to fit in quite a bit of painting over the last couple of weeks. And I've been, as you know, recently been working through a lot of the French tanks that Richard Hogg did for me, and I worked it out. It's about 3 years ago now, so these have been sitting in a box for about 3 years. This is the last batch that I finished up though. The first ones were 3 Sharp B1s. These were called by the Germans the Panzerkampfwagen B2740F. Try saying that when you've had a few. And these are really nice tanks. I mean, the reason I've got 3 here, I actually have 4 of them, is because I'd already painted one when Richard first sent them through a long time ago, in late war colours. So I've done 1 in late war and 2 in early war as well, and these will make appearance at some point on the tabletop. I then also turned to the 4 Suma S35s that Richard had sent through as well, and did the same again with these, split them up into between early war tanks in the grey and then also the 3-tone late war tanks as well, and these were renamed as the Panzerkampfwagen 35S 739F by the Germans. So there we go, that's all of those French tanks finished. And once again, thank you Richard, if you're watching this, a massive thank you for sending those 3 years ago. I think it's 2023 when he did send those through. I was looking at my emails, so they've just been sitting in the box since then, but they have been painted and they will get used at some point, because I'm looking forward to using some interesting French tanks on the tabletop. Richard also sent me some other stuff as well back in 2023, and that has now made its way onto the painting tabletop. So I'm working through that. I'll leave that until the next update. You'll get to see those, but they're going to be some British and American vehicles, so they're coming as well. So as I say, at the moment I'm just trying to clear out some of the stuff that's in the boxes and in the lead pile, or plastic pile, resin pile in this case, just to try to clear things out a little bit. But I also, as well, speaking of resin, I painted the second of those 2 British squares that Neil sent over as well just a month or so ago. I want to get these done because these were primed and they were sitting on the table, and I thought I'd made the base and everything, so I just thought let's get these painted as well. They're out of the way, and then and again, I think these are really nice models. I currently haven't heard anything back from the modeler, the printer, so I'm still waiting for some information about that, about releases on those. So hold your breath on that, but these I think are really fantastic. And once again, thank you massively, Neil, for those. As I say, I'm trying to clear out bits and pieces at the moment, just to try to get some space to get back to the Prussians of the Epic box set as well, because that's kind of stumbled at the moment, that project, and I really want to get back to it. So it's something I'm going to do, but I'm kind of trying to get rid of these small stumbling blocks in the way beforehand. In the post, Mr. Chris Clark sent me a very nice printed 3D printed water tower. He said it was French, but a water tower is a water tower, right? So this is going to be great. This is going to be dead easy to paint. Just a nice 3D printed model. I'll put that on a base, paint that up, do some weathering on it, and then that is a nice little set piece really to sit on a table in France as well. So thanks for that, Chris, if you're watching. I will get that painted pretty quickly, I think. It's not going to take a huge amount of time. In the other news, it's been relatively quiet for gaming, because last Thursday, as I record this, I went to see Godspeed You Black Emperor over in Leeds, so I didn't go down to the Outpost with Dex and Steve and Gary, but they carried on with the Road to Bremen campaign that Dex has basically been umpiring, playing, shepherding us through. And Steve, I wasn't there, but I got good reports that Steve made a good show of himself and captured the table that we'd been fighting over the week before. He went back to it and was able to capture it with bombardments and things. This time round, we moved on to, I think it's table 5 of the campaign, of 8 in total. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but I think we're in campaign turn 6 as well, because of the Germans. They're not always fighting everywhere. Sometimes they're falling back. In this case, the Germans decided to stand and fight, and Gary came and joined us with Dex as the Germans and myself and Steve as the attacking British. Now, I decided on what supports we were going to take, and in the first case I thought, let's get some reconnaissance on there. So we went for 3 universal carriers. Because our support list in the campaign is quite small initially, until you fight the table again, then it expands to like bigger stuff like longbow tanks or artillery barrages and things. So in the first instance it's quite small, so I thought, well, let's go with some reconnaissance units, and they can then jump out and do assault deployments and capture things like jumping off points or the objectives, those kind of things, and also spin the enemy around a little bit. Now, initially this really worked really well. We sent all 3 universal carriers bombing down the road. It meant that they jumped out of Panzerschreck first of all to basically, as I said at the time, to crack a nut with a sledgehammer. It missed. It was the luckiest universal carrier in the world. It then brassed up the Panzerschreck team, killed them, and then we managed to get it up and onto one of the jumping off points for the Germans, behind where one of their Volkssturm sections had also deployed, to cover one of our jumping off points. At the same time, we were smoking the hell out of them as well with our mortar team. So it was all going crazy. And then we sent out 2 more universal carriers, and again, we basically were just using these to just fox them and just send them in circles, and it worked. They deployed their Hetzer, again another sledgehammer, to try and crack a nut of a universal carrier. Remember, these universal carriers only have 4 men in them, a junior leader and a Bren team, and that's it. They're small, they're very nippy, but they are, very, very brittle as well. So, they were basically throwing everything they had at our universal carriers, whereas we were just kind of just watching this madness unfold. Meanwhile, we decided then, Steve and I, to attack their secondary objective. We moved per unit under the cover of smoke, but then we got to a point where the momentum went from the British attack, and we were we couldn't move forward without getting shot by the Volkssturm. We couldn't really do much else because there was 2 sections there. But unfathomably, the Germans started pulling their units away from that area, so it kind of gave us a real good chance to pull forward one of our jumping off points, deploy a second section, and then go into a close combat against those Volkssturm up on basically up against the fence. We worked out the dice. We had 30 dice, but that dropped down to 20 because we were attacking light cover. The Volkssturm, on the other hand, had 15 dice, so the odds were in our favour with two sections attacking. Had we gone on to a draw and fought again, then the odds would have been just completely in our favour. However, they beat us by 1 hit. I think it was something like 9 to 8 hits or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but we ended up killing over half of their section, and they only killed about 3 of ours. But it meant that our British basically fell back. They then ended the turn, cleared all the smoke, and just poured loads of MG42 fire into us from the machine gun. And then, to add insult to injury, before I got a chance at least to say let's fall back, Steve had rolled the command dice, which meant we had to play through another full turn, which meant that they got another full turn after that, which meant that they then machine gunned us again and basically hammered our units who were sitting out in the open at this point with no protection, and then we decided let's just pull back. We'd lost, I think, 10 casualties at that point, plus 2 of the universal carriers as well, and one of the team, well, both teams from those. So yeah, it was what we'd started off really well. We just then hit a wall and we just couldn't get forward from that point. So we're going to have to fight this table again. What is good is that the Germans have to fight it with the units that they've got left, so the Volkssturm are going to be really badly damaged anyway. So we're going to go back in, we're going to reorganise our units into a full platoon, I think, and then have a look at some of the larger support options like the mortar barrage and things like that, and try and do it again. That's next week's game, so I'm looking forward to that and see if we can do any better this time. But great game, absolutely fantastic game. Even, you know, everybody's body language shifted. The Germans were really looking down on the first half of it, and then we were really looking down on the second half of it. Another great game, and just show you how, again, from our point of view, just how good Chain of Command is as a game. Once you get into the nuances of it and you understand all those little layers and little bits and pieces that you can do whilst you're playing. Brilliant stuff. Alright, Salute was last weekend. I had a really good time. It's always a long day for me, Salute, because I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, just before sparrows fart, get on the train at 6:30 to get down to the Excel Centre for about 9:30, and then I'm not home till about 7:30, 8 o'clock. I did manage to get, once I was able to actually get a slightly earlier train this time back because of various disruptions on the line, so I just jumped on an early one, and I got back about 7:30, and I was able then to put the show report together, which is on the channel, so go and check that out. I also put a couple of shorts on the day as well whilst I was there, so again, check those out as well. Gives you a flavour of the idea of the thing, and it was absolutely rammed. I've heard numbers of about 8,000 plus, more than last year, which was about 7,000 people. I've not seen any official numbers yet, so if anybody knows, let me know in the comments. But it was absolutely rammed, and as a lot of other people have said on their show reports and their discussions of it, that yes, it was still very busy till quite late in the day. I didn't leave till about 4 o'clock-ish, and it was still pretty busy then. People were still playing games, there were still a lot of people around, and usually these shows have pretty much thinned out and are dead by that point. The only people that are there are the people who have to be there, who put games on, or who are selling things. This was very different. Still a lot of punters, still a lot of people around. Managed to talk to loads of people. I can't remember everybody, but there was loads of you. It was great to see that Joe Bilton got another award for one of his great games as well. In the past, I've helped Joe on some of his games. This year he didn't need me because he had basically an army of people to help him, which on my part was good, because last year I'd helped Joe until about midday, and then I was on the panel for an hour or so in the afternoon, which meant I had a very short time to actually get around the show and do filming and stuff. This time I was very leisurely. I could just take my time, walk around, have long chats to people, which was great. So if you did come up and say hello, and there was lots of people who did, thank you very much for that. And it's always nice to chat and see who's watching the videos and things, and just who engages with this stuff. I also bumped into Nick from Two Fat Lardies and Henry Hyde as we were all having a chat, and we sat down and did a quick interview, which is over on the Two Fat Lardies Patreon. I think it's one of the free ones, so you can go over there and check that out. We were just talking about the state of the hobby and how we felt about it. Now, this kind of brings me on to the next point. Is there's been a lot of discussion, in particular about this Salute, about the change of the show itself. Now, I've only been going to Salute since 2019, so only really in the last 6-7 years. Obviously, COVID notwithstanding, but so I've not really seen a massive change. It has always been very similar to me, but there's been a lot of people that have said, oh, it's lost its historical flavour, it's more science fiction and fantasy these days. Now, arguably, yes, it is more science fiction and fantasy. There's probably about 60 to 40% weighted in that favour, but that's because of the hobby, I think, and the hobby has kind of just shifted that way quite recently, because people are trying to break away, I guess, from Games Workshop stuff, and there's a lot more companies such as Warlord and also Wargames Atlantic that are dipping their feet into science fiction and fantasy kind of stuff. Are they following the trends? Are they following what people want? That's the question. And I've seen a lot of discussion about it, and I mean, I don't know what it was like in 1977 in the Kensington Town Hall, so I've got nothing to measure it against, and I'm fairly sure in 1977 it probably was more historical, and in the 80s, but then that's because Games Workshop wasn't as big then as they are now, so there's a lot more people playing it. What I will say is, there are a lot of people who are complaining about it and saying, oh, I wouldn't go because it's too historical, it's too fantasy, and it's too too much science fiction stuff there. The thing is, it's all run by volunteers, and everybody who puts games on, apart from the big companies like Warlord or any of the other ones, they're doing it at their own expense, and they're doing it at their own time, and it's their own collections of figures. And Salute Warlord, the South London Warlords, reserve tables for local groups, or any group, not just local groups, any group, to put on a game at the show. So there is space and a place for everybody and anybody who wants to put a game on. So if you think there aren't enough historical games on there, get some of your mates together, go to the club, say let's put a game on at Salute, let's put a big game on, let's put something historical on, let's try and turn this tanker around. If that's what if you feel that strongly about it, then it's up to people to do something about it. And I think that's the bottom line here, really. And that's my take on it. I would rather have a game show like Salute that shows off a lot of the hobby, the wider hobby of wargaming, and have it, probably very much historical and fantasy, than I would not having it, or having it 100%. And the only people that can do anything about it are those people that are the ones that are saying there's not enough historical. If you don't think there's enough historical stuff there, put a table on, do it. It's that simple. All it would do is cost you your expenses to get there and your time. But if you want to show off the hobby, and if you don't want it to flounder and disappear, then show it off, do something. And there are plenty of other wargaming shows where historicals are at the peak of it. I mean, Salute to me is a bit of a trading show, so it is also going to follow the trends of the hobbies, and the trends of the hobbies are science fiction and fantasy. That's just the reality of it, really. Like I said, because of Games Workshop, a lot of people are following in their coattails. Because that's popular, people are going to sell stuff that is popular to other people. Try to expand those ranges. You will always get an undercurrent of historical stuff. And the other thing as well, I always think as well about this, I think about this in terms of groups that I've worked with in my career as an archaeologist. I work with a lot of local archaeology groups and history groups, or have done in the past, doing community archaeology on various projects, and I've worked with lots of different community groups. And they always say to me, it always comes up that we need to encourage younger people into this group, because they are generally of a certain demographic. And that certain demographic is, in general, I'm speaking in general terms here, is about 60 plus retirees who have got time and money and the ability to do the things that they want to do without having kids, careers, mortgages, all those things that are tying them down in their previous earlier lives. And this is always going to be the way, and it's the same with wargaming. It is a hobby. These archaeology and history groups are hobbyists at the end of the day. They are joining something because they're interested in it, and the same with wargaming. Historical wargamers in general are of the older spectrum, so although some of the old guard are probably dying off, not to put too fine a point on it, or not turning up because of various ailments, or just not being able to get to shows or whatever, there are still people, younger people, 40 plus, 50 plus, who are joining in historical gaming, who have probably come through their local Warhammer 40k games when they were younger, and that's always been the way. So there is, every time there is a shift of the old guard falling off at the top, there is a new guard that's coming in, but they're not 16, they're in their 40s, they're in their 50s. So chasing after those 16-year-olds, or 20-year-olds, that sounds a bit tough. If they're chasing after those 20-year-olds to get into historical gaming, you're kind of flogging, you're on a hiding to nothing. I'm not saying that they don't exist, because they do, because I was one of them, but people, as they get older, develop more of an interest in historical gaming, and that has always been the way, and that is always how it will always be. And as people get to an age where, as I say, their kids aren't dependent anymore, their mortgages are paid off, they've got more money coming in, they've got more time to do these things, they can then get into historical wargaming. So I never see a problem with it. And this is exemplified by the fact that last night I was down at the club, down at Outpost. We were playing a game of Chain of Command. Some chap came over. I'd have guessed probably in his 50s, probably a little bit older than me, a few years older than me. And he was just looking at the table and just really enjoying looking at the table. And he said, I've just been playing a lot of science fiction stuff. I used to play bolt action, got into science fiction stuff. He said I'd be interested in getting back into some more historical stuff. So we were saying, well, you know, come and join us. You're more than welcome. Just give us a nudge and we'll set up a game for you anytime you want. And again, you know, this is a 50-year-old, and we've also had, you know, quite a lot of interest from some of the role players who are, again, in their 40s, 50s. As they come past, they're always taking a look at it. But you've also got in there, in that game store, 90% of it is 20 to 30-year-olds playing Warhammer. They will eventually get a bit older, and they will probably look at something else, which is historical gaming. That's just the way it is. That's just the demographics of it. So I never really see an issue so much with, you know, the hobby, the people getting older. I think there's always going to be an undercurrent of historical gamers. And again, this kind of goes back to Salute. A massive raft of people from, you know, teenagers all the way up to octogenarians. And I said this in the Two Fat Lardies interview, that I just think that it's brilliant to see that people are out playing games, and I don't have a particular issue with historical games disappearing under that wave. You might be different. You might have something different to say about it. If you do, let me know in the comments. I mean, I could go on for much longer than this, but there's not much point, because other people like Dom at Boots on the Table and also Lee at Big Lee's Miniature Adventures, they've done some really good post-Salute reports talking about what their feelings were, and even Rich at Two Fat Lardies. And they're all different. They all have different perspectives on this. Mine is that I hope Salute continues. I hope that, you know, the historical side of it continues, and the only way that that will happen is by people literally getting off their arses and putting a game on. So, on that bombshell, Steelers, I will leave it at that. I'll say, as always, thanks for watching. If you haven't done so, please do subscribe to the channel. It does help the old algorithm, getting these videos out there and getting those views in and what have you. Hit the like button, and of course, as always, I will see you in the next Storm of Steel video.